Good evening, everybody. This is Arul. It's a very interesting day today. It is our company People First 27th year completion, and we begin 28th year. So on this day, we were looking at what topic to do. We've been doing this live every week, and I came up with a very simple topic. The topic that I at first was working on was how do we give feedback. Started writing the flyer, but it wasn't sitting too well. And then I realized that even more important before we study and explore and reflect on how we can give feedback, how do we receive feedback? Because it's one of the most extraordinarily important phenomena in the human existence. As a family member, as a brother, sister, son, daughter, husband, wife, we're always getting feedback, perhaps all the time. And at work, there is this formal appraisals and feedback mechanisms, but that's only a very tiny part. Much of it happens in the coffee table, over the tea, over a phone call, or comments that are passed on the shop floor. And over the last 26 years of my engagement with the world, running an organization and interacting with many people, I've actually found that this is one of the most difficult things. How do we experience a feedback? So maybe I'll begin with a story, and then we will go into it light and deep as best as we can. It's a story that my dad used to say quite a bit. So there was a farmer, elderly man, and his younger son, and one day they kind of decided that they wanted to sell their donkey because they just wanted a little bit more money, which was not coming in. So they used to have this marketplace on a Sunday. People used to come and sell and go back. It used to exist for a couple of hours, and often it'll be a little farther away that everybody comes together from different villages. So they decided to go to the marketplace, which is like about an hour or two or something of that sort. So they took the donkey, and as they were walking, perhaps at a point where the sun was just starting to come up, the elderly man told the younger boy, hey, look, why are we walking along the donkey? Why don't you sit on the donkey? And that way, you could be far more comfortable. So the younger boy sat on the donkey and they started moving forward. All was fine for them. And then two other people who were coming on the opposite side were speaking amongst themselves, perhaps a little loudly, and they made a comment. Look at this young boy. No common sense. The old man is walking on the side. How heartless the young boy is. Now, they both heard, and the young boy felt that, oh my God, what is it I'm doing? I'm not taking care of my dad. So he got down and he asked the older man, his father, to sit on the donkey. Father said, no, no, no. And then he sat because, two people have given feedback. These two people have received feedback and they have acted on it. And then they went further, and you can obviously guess what I'm going to say next. You may have read the story also. Two other people came and said, what uh, heartless old man. The young boy is walking on the sun is peeking up. He has no heart. He's sitting aram se, and the young boy is struggling along. Now this father said, okay, this seems complicated now. So then he said, why don't you also sit? I also sit. We both will sit on the donkey and we'll go. They were both very happy. Now we have received feedback. Well, put it all together. And now we are doing something which is taking care of all feedbacks received so far. So they now both of them are sitting in the donkey and they're going. Sun is going a little above. It's getting warmer and warmer. And then two other people or three other people came and said, and these are animal lovers. So they said how heartless these human beings are. Animals are, kind. Animals are, mistreated. And the two buffaloes who look like buffaloes are sitting on this poor donkey. And now these people with these father and son, the old man and the younger boy, got very confused. They didn't know what to do. Walking alone, beside didn't seem a point. All these combinations were not working. And then the boy came up with a brainwave. They took a stick and tied the donkey, upside down. One end of the stick the father held, at the other end, the older man held, and the other the son held, and they started walking. All seemed fine right now. But what happened was they were crossing a bridge. The donkey was fine till then, but the moment it saw its reflection in the water, it got scared, got agitated, and somewhat, managed to flee. But in the process, fell down the bridge and fell into the water and got drowned. It's a very interesting story. I think my father said this just once or twice, but it's been in my mind, as you can see, over about 20 years plus. So receiving feedback is very simple and very complicated, because it's not that I take a feedback. First of all, there's a lot of stuff that happens internally. Uh, to say something very interesting, I just share openly here. Once, I got a very strong feedback in the public, when I was doing a training program many years back. And my tummy got upset, to that extent it churned inside. And what I was upset about was the person didn't discuss properly and privately, and it came out in a group. And then I had to process all that and what the group would think. And that whole churn upset my tummy, and in about 10-15 minutes I excused myself and I had to come back. So there are two complications with processing feedback. A, what is my inner response? Two, what is the action that is going to come after I receive feedback? Is it the right action? The point here is that not everybody who's giving feedback has understood us perfectly. Okay. But something seems amiss. Something is hitting them incorrectly, or they're sensing, that maybe we're not performing as well, or, maybe we are performing as well, but our attitude or the way we are interacting with our team members, it's not gelling well. So some feedback comes. So once the feedback is coming in, first of all, we will first look at our inner response, and then we will talk about how do we know, how do we integrate, and how do we assimilate it. We'll just look at these two things in a very simple and a deep way. So first of all, it'll hit us. It'll hit us, if we have not come to a point of neutrality, if we have not come to a point of, a very calm poise where, that you're doing fine and you're always in a learning posture, you're welcoming what others are saying. Until we come to that point, it'll hit us. It'll hit us in our weak spots, which means that if we grew up with a certain lack of confidence, it'll hit that. If we grew up with a sense of fear, it'll hit that and it'll generate the fear. Much of what happens in the corporate workspaces is not really about our work, me as a working professional, but it's got to do about my upbringing. It's got to do about my earlier jobs. It's got to do about this job. It's me as a human being who's also working. So we got to clearly remember that it's human beings who are working as well. So when it comes to this reaction or a response to a feedback, it's going to trigger stuff that is untransformed inside me. Okay. Now, largely, to make it a little bit more comprehensive for us, largely human beings can be classified as mental human beings who are in the mind, or vital, life energy human beings. The first kind of human beings, as far as there's a logic, then they would take it. If the person is largely operating from the mind, then as far as there's a logic, as far as there's a clear reason, then they would by and large take it, even though if it is difficult for them. But if somebody is more centered on their emotions, on their feelings, the moment it starts churning, they shut themselves up, or they become a little bit more passive than being actively engaged with the other person and receiving more feedback, etc. So the first thing to watch out is if our inner response is turbulent, then as far as I understand, it is completely our responsibility to work on that. Of course, we can turn back and request the other person to give the feedback quite a little bit more softly, or if they're giving it like what I said, inappropriately in front of a group, we could request them to, speak and privately and share, what is needed, etc. We can do all that, but we are responsible for our inner reactions and responses. The other person can only be appropriate and careful as best as they can. So when we take responsibility for our inner responses, then you can't suppress it, you can't hide it, because if you do that, then externally you may do what is the right action, but internally there is a residual suffering which will make us a little bit more passive, which will undermine our potentials and our capacities, even though we may do like what the organizations wants in a kind of a fair or sufficient or even good posture. There would be a certain undermining that would happen if we suppress it. Neither can we just throw it out. Okay, like there's often like I do remember a time, much when I was much younger, uh, in terms of my me running the organization. There was once I gave a feedback to somebody, and in my side also it was wrong, because I waited, and I waited to see more data. I waited a certain build-up happening, so I gave it a little delayed. But the other person also, I do remember, came quite strong on the reactions, threw it out, and I said, "Look, I really am not saying that." And it took us a while to sit down and understand. Okay, so neither is suppressing right, neither is throwing out just like that on the other is right as well. We are responsible for our inner reactions, the way our mind is churning or calm, the way our emotions are churning are calm, the way our feelings are churning are calm. It's completely our responsibility. Okay, the stress that we may feel inside when there's a feedback coming in is completely our individual responsibility, and as far as I'm concerned, 100% it's our responsibility. Now what do you want to do about it? That's where a continual learning comes. Continual learning is not just about a particular skill. By the way, if at any point of time the audience here, because some are hearing these later, I'm aware, those who are hearing it live, if there's a question or a comment, you can always put it on chat, and I'll pick it up, in that sense of it. So the inner, so learning is not just about a skill. It's not just about, I'm in Java and there are constant updates that are coming in Java. I'm going to learn it. Or I'm doing Six Sigma. There are some nuances that have come. I sign up for a new course, or I catch up with a buddy and get myself equipped. Learning is not just about the skill. Learning is also about how am I living as a human? How am I processing stuff that's happening in life? By the way, if you carefully look at it from morning to evening, you may be receiving about 1,000 or a couple of thousands feedback all the time, all the time. Okay, so you're walking and hey, you look a bit tired today. Are you okay? Now you've already received a feedback. That something is not okay by the way you're walking into the office and sitting. Are you okay? It's asked in a very good intention, but you've already got a feedback. So learning also is about how do we deal with the life situations, and feedback is a very constant thing about life itself. So that comes the first necessity, that you figure out a way. It can come from a yoga, it can come from an exercise, it can come from emotional, there are techniques like EFT which help you to work on your emotions. You could work on the troublesome thoughts, but there are many ways of doing inner work. As far as I understand, as much as you take a bath every day, it is also very important that you keep learning about how do you do inner work. In the school that we run called Coaching with Depth, where we train coaches, we actually spend a lot of time training them how to guide others on the inner, because the inner is the 70% of the iceberg, which is going to influence the rest of it. Okay, so that's the first. You take up responsibility for your inner stuff. Okay, now I'm going to just give a short practice. I'm going to give a fundamental practice. One of the best things that I've done, and I want you to just visualize it. I may be speaking about it, but say, for example, think of a time when a feedback hit you in your belly, hit you in your mind, and you were agitated. Now, one of the best things I've always done is I step back. Okay, I step back. Step number one is to step back. Step back and wait. Okay, now you can do it in any which way. Many of us do it with watching our natural breath. For me, I also use external anchors. I slightly shift my attention away from the person. My eye, I just leave it, let's say pointed upwards or pointed into the distance, just to give me a neutral anchor so that I'm not getting reactive. Okay, if the reaction is happening, I slightly step back, and to step back, I need an anchor. I either go inside my breath, or actually, like once I'm giving all the tiny things, actually I've just shifted like this. And though I was looking at them, I just pointed differently so that I could anchor, stabilize, and then actually listen carefully and process it carefully, which I'll come to next. So you can do you'll have to figure out, experiment, but the practices have to be very tiny. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to do an hour of meditation every day, and thus, my inner reactions will go down. It'll go down only to some extent. You need very tiny, quick practices, and I have developed this by experimenting. The other stuff that has worked really for me is I connect to my heart, which always, calms me and quietens me. Sometimes I connect to that heart whatsoever. Okay, so the response, to summarize, the responsibility of the inner reaction is completely yours. And to be good human beings, to lead fulfill working life for the rest of our lives, figure out, experiment, learn from. There are many well-being courses that are being offered across the world. Many are being offered, like day in, day out, I'm seeing a plethora of courses being offered, because there is a need, for us now to learn this. So this is the first step. Okay, now the second step. So even in this, the first practice is you step back and then you engage back. Now, this is something I learned from errors. When sometimes people gave me very sharp feedback in my many different points of time in my life, sometimes I disengage, sometimes I disconnect. I withdraw a little bit, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, sometimes for months. And that definitely has caused a lot of discomfort in the productivity of the organization, in the way I develop people, or in the way I develop myself, with reference to many of my work that I'm doing in the external world. So once you step back, which means you're reconnecting, you're calming down, then is to be connected with the person who's giving the feedback, and and stay there. I will talk about processing it soon. Stay there, keep you may hold a slight distance, that's fine, that is for your protection, or a certain time that you need, that's fine. But step back and be in engagement with the person is very important. Now I'll talk about how to process it, which is very subtle but very, very, very important for us to reflect on. Remember the story. There was no right way in that. Okay, that's exactly like we could do a case study on, if an old man and a young man are going to take a donkey to the marketplace at 10 a.m. on a Sunday in, let's say, 1950. We could write a case study and see, what's the best way, and there are 10 different answers that are going to come. Okay, in such a case, there are many different ways, and there's always a pros and cons about it. How do you process feedback? What I've understood is, always we need to be clear on our reference point. It is against a common referral point of how we want to live life, is the way we will be taking feedback and processing. So it's not that. So when you get a feedback in, we have to receive it. Then maybe we look at whether it is coming from multiple different people, whether it is just one person who has said, or the same phenomenon is happening in a couple of other people, or repeatedly with one person. Now if it is happening with several other people, then definitely I need to look into it. Okay, number one. Number two, in maybe sometime we'll talk about it. There's also this psychological concept called shadow self, which means that I think all is fine with me, but others are seeing something of my shortcoming or my plus point. Feedback also could be about, by the way, mm, uh, many people also have a discomfort receiving very positive feedback. They get slightly overwhelmed. So it's not just about the negative stuff also, it's about the positive stuff also. I had that problem much early on. When people used to praise me, I used to feel a bit awkward. And I still remember once my mentor, my teacher, he praised me sky high in a large group. I had extraordinary discomfort because I felt I won't be able to now live up to it, because I was enjoying and blissfully playing at that. I was actually playing at a very high level, and whatever he was teaching, I was playing at an exemplary level. But I was doing it with joy. I was not necessarily looking at a praise and all that. But the moment the praise came, and that too in front of a very large group of very highly acclaimed people, I felt very nervous. I felt that now it's going to be difficult. And very interestingly, I shot an arrow at him, in public, actually. And it came from my unconscious. And I said, look, what the heck am I doing? And then I realized my discomfort of receiving that praise as a feedback also. I reacted. Okay, going back to step one. And then I started reflecting. That night, that afternoon, I reacted. Night, I reflected. Morning, I wrote a personal note to him, apologizing and clarifying where it was coming from. Okay. So, going into how to process it, it's not that all exactly the way people are saying, it need not be perfectly accurate. There is something that they are pointing out. Then we need to look into it, but always with a referral point. And I'll give you some examples. Referral point could be is five different people have said some things. What is the common point? Commonality of what they're saying? There can be a referral point. Or five different people have said something about you, but you feel you have to start sensing it. Does it feel true about you? Now, you can't rely on your reactions. It's going to fool you. That's not what you're looking for. But always within us, we have a natural sense of this is good, what is beautiful. We have a natural apparatus that detects it. So when five different people have said it, whether it is praise or blame or criticism or a pure neutral referral point, you take it and then you sit with it. You be with it for a while. Okay, be with it for a while. It can be 1 minute, it can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 days, it can be 1 year. Be with it, but continue to be in action. Don't withdraw from the action, but be with it till either the connecting thread stands up at you, or behind those feedbacks that have come, because you're sitting with interest, because you're sitting with an attitude of learning, you actually grasp exactly what is the skill that needs to be developed, or is it an inner attitude or inner poise that needs to be developed. You get a clue. Now, when you hit something right, you will have a aha. Now we are looking for the natural aha here. So, you feel like, yeah, I think I have nailed it, which is the second point. The third is you have to move it into action. I'll come to that in a moment. So you're always checking it with a referral point, either something that is cutting through, something that's a commonality, you're picking it up. Okay. And then you feel like, okay, yeah, I've got the commonality. But sometimes if you add the element of truth, if you add the element of, yeah, it feels correct, if you add that element, then you wait. Or maybe you go to the YouTube. You check a few experts on the particular topic where you've been given feedback. You take a couple of books. Okay. Like, so for example, in a particular specialization that that I'm now specializing on in a particular area of my work, I have received feedback that my competency levels are very poor. Okay. Now I thus had to build it because I had vision and passion in that area. I had low competency. Taking all the feedback, I built, and now I'm verifying. Really is my skill developing, etc., etc. So you either look at the common points, or you go with your own. It's not yours reactions. You're looking at a natural sense inside us, which knows the truth of something, which knows when things fall in play. And then what many time will happen is you've got received feedback about five different things, but what you've got is a deeper problem. You've seen a deeper problem, or you've seen a deeper possibility. You've seen a deeper gift. And since you have not used that gift, it is showing up as an error outside. If you don't use our gifts very well, it will show up as an error outside to the others. If you don't live up to our potential, it'll miss, the direction will miss slightly, and it'll land up as a, oh yeah, maybe he's not doing it right, she's not doing it right. So it's not just taking literally what is being said. That's only a start point. You go in deeper, reflect till you get, this is exactly what I want to do. Well, this is exactly what I need to develop. And a person who's able to live life like that, I'm not claiming I've done that all the time, I'm learning it as I'm honestly sharing, is a person whose flame is lit. you are sitting and living with a poise of evolution. You're sitting and living with a poise of learning, and you're humble enough to learn from the most seniors and the most juniors. Today, I actually find that the best mentors are the juniors. They come, they are raw, they're pure. They just speak out very openly. You'll get a lot of feedback from them, and thus you can learn quite a bit if you can just be a little bit humble. The third point, very important, is action it. Action it, action it, action it, action it, action it, action it. There's nothing much I can speak about that. So once you don't action too quickly, also, which means that I'm just going to, if I'm going to live life just taking feedbacks of everybody and doing, you'll get a very mixed way of living life. Things won't, fall in place. So at the same time, I can't be waiting for eternity, especially when we are in corporate world situations or business situations. There's always a time frame, and like for example, in appraisal cycles, within 6 months you are expected to make a movement, and most of the organizations are very very practical about it. They don't expect 100% change. They're very happy with a 30%, with a 50%, and there is an attitude of continuous progression. They are very happy. So action it, action it. Now it's up to you. How do you track it? You can journal about it, or you can just monitor it in the back of your mind. You're just putting attention on it. You're just watching how things are landing up. You're watching how the work is moving out, how people are perceiving, and how people are giving feedback. And then slowly, you keep checking really if you're progressing. You act, 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 act. To sum it all up, receiving feedback is not just coming from the other person. It's perhaps message coming from the universe. Maybe it's a message coming from your creator. Maybe it's a message coming from your own soul, but maybe coming from a different source. So receiving feedback is not just about human beings, others. It's also waiting clearly inside us so that, like you do something, internally you will get feedback also. Like you think you're moving in the right direction, but internally there is something that struggles inside. You've got feedback from your soul. You've got feedback from something inner that is guiding you all the time that, hey, buddy, no. But sometimes, you may do something which you thought was wrong, but internally, there seems to be some support, and externally it falls right. It's a very complex world, actually. And more the complexity is going to increase because large nuances are opening up. So to summarize, listen all the time. Watch out for your inner responses. Step back, reconnect elsewhere shortly so that you can anchor, but then come back and engage. Don't remain passive for too long. That's the first step. The second step, which means always take responsibility for your inner reactions. In the second step, process things, reflect, either through the common points or waiting till you get a grasp of, yeah, this is what it is. This is the deeper problem. This is the underlying solution. This is my gift. This is my essence. This is the org need which I'm seeing through this problem. So you catch it. Okay. And the third is action, action, action. A bias for action is the title of a book that I love. As human beings and as working professionals and as people engaged in family and work life, action is important. So we are actioning what insight has come in based on the multiple feedbacks, and then we move forward. So yeah, we're almost coming close to the end. Those who are hearing it later, if there's an additional point that comes to you, you want to share, you can always put it on chat. I thank those who are coming for these sessions, and why are we doing all this? Let's build a life and work which is very joyful, very creative, and very progressive. And in that way, we go closer to our destiny. We go closer to what we can contribute truly through our organizations into the world. So thank you so much, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.